This morning on BRN, could surging oil prices derail the stock market? And we're going to welcome back to the program Jane King. She's a financial journalist joining us from the NASDAQ. Jane, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Great to be here, Jeffrey.
Stock market's on a good run, at least at the day we're recording this. I mean, it continues to churn and, the train keeps on rolling. I did want to ask you about some of these surging oil, I'm going to say it right, oil prices, not oil, as we say in Baltimore. So could these oil prices, there I go, derail this stock market? I don't want to call it recovery, but this engine that keeps on going.
Well, not yet, and probably not unless we see them go quite a bit higher. But oil up 10% for the week. It's a huge jump in just, in 1 week to see something like that. And two things really driving this. So we've got the tensions going on in the Middle East. There's been no retaliation yet from Israel to Iran. There's speculation, are they going to attack Iran's oil facilities? That would take that off the world market, at least for a while, but nothing's happened there. And I'm not hearing it talked about every day like it was there for a while. But the other thing that's happening is China's economy, at least their stock market, has been soaring over the past couple of weeks as the Chinese government has put billions of stimulus into the economy. China's been in the doldrums really even before the pandemic, but then certainly since then. But this is some serious moves by the government to try to spur some economic activity there. And if China would come back and be an economic powerhouse like it was 10, 15 years ago, that could really create a lot of demand for oil and send prices higher. So those have been the two things that have been driving oil prices higher lately.
And Jane, so higher oil prices typically means higher gasoline fuel prices for airlines, for consumers driving their vehicles, and then ultimately it's kind of a pass through. But what could this mean for gasoline prices, fuel prices ultimately?
Well, it would eventually drive them up. Now, Bank of America did an analysis and they found a 10% increase in oil prices results to just a tenth of a percent increase in inflation. So it'd have to get closer to $100 a barrel or so, I think, before, and it's right now in the 70s. So it would get there, if it would get there, then I think it would start to be a concern. Goldman Sachs predicts that oil prices will be somewhere around 70, 80, 85, maybe as a high price. So even the projections aren't at $100 a barrel. I think it would have to be some extreme circumstances for us to get there.
And does this, we've obviously an election, we've talked to you with you about the impact of presidential elections, not so much historically in the market, but let's talk about policy for a second. It seems like domestic oil production, that could be an area where the United States, kind of beefs things up to kind of meet the oil demand both here domestically, but also internationally.
Right. Well, when the Biden administration took over, they really halted a lot of oil production. And it was one of the contributing factors to the increase in oil and gas prices that we saw, in addition to the Russia invasion of Ukraine. People just, screeched about that. So they started allowing more production to happen. They released oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We're now at that reserve, the lowest since the 80s. So that's a little scary. So that has brought those gas prices down, and they don't seem to be a threat to the election. Now, we've heard former President Trump say they're going to drill, baby, drill, and that is one way to really get the inflation down if he's elected. So we could see these prices fall even further depending on how the election turns out.
Yeah. Jane, I want to ask you about inflation, kind of turning our conversation a little bit, because you mentioned inflation. Recent CPI report within the last couple days. Again, the day we're recording this, we typically release Jane's show a week after we record it, just so everyone understands. But let's look at this CPI number. How are things doing? Are we seeing a cooling inflation, or is it still pockets of inflation in certain areas, like food, eggs, as an example?
Still pockets of inflation. It kind of depends on what you're looking at. So energy has gone down, but eggs up 39%. The bird flu has a lot to do with that, but
Mhm.
auto insurance is way up. Used car prices are way up. Housing is still unaffordable, whether you're buying or renting for many people. So there's still areas of inflation, and that overall number did come in hotter than expected for September. So we still inflation is a concern, and it really took the bigger interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, I think, off the table, at least for the next meeting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because we had 50 basis points, which is pretty significant cut in September, I think it was,
September.
because it's October now, September. So the consensus now is that given the hotter than expected inflation, we would see the Federal Reserve say maybe not a cut this next time around.
Oh, yeah, or maybe not 50%, a 50 basis point cut. So
Right.
maybe a quarter. And I think they're going to watch because the jobs report was stronger than expected. Inflation's a little higher. I think they're going to watch these economic reports very carefully before they make the decision in November.
Do you think they'll revise down the jobs report again? I mean, I
Well,
mean,
they might. They've
historically,
had a trend of doing
there's a
that.
trend, right? You
Yeah,
know,
we'll see.
we'll have to see. Well, Jane, we're going to have to leave it there. Always great to talk to you. Excellent announcements. I love the fact that with you, Jane, we can go from this topic to this topic to this topic to this topic. It makes it fun for me, and I think the audience gets so much out of it. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program next week.
See you then.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details at our website. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.